So today we're going to talk about how a monopolist maximizes profit. I've got a graph up here that shows the market a monopolist faces, right? They're the only game in town, they're the only seller, and so the demand for their product is the market demand for the product. The monopolist, though, has a real privilege. They get to set both price and quantity when they're determining how they're going to maximize profit. And that's a little bit different than the firm in the competitive market, because the firm in the competitive market only got to select Q. So the monopolist faces a totally different set of circumstances because of the privilege of being the only seller. They get to tell consumers how much to pay for the good, and then they get to select the scarcity of the good as well. So we have to internalize the monopolist's decision in setting price and Q when determining what output's going to be. So the way that we internalize this, and I've said this in class and I'll say it again, the marginal revenue line is always going to be twice as steep as the demand curve for the monopolist. You can take that on faith. It'll always be the case. It's not a coincidence that the marginal revenue curve is twice as steep as the demand. There's some mathematics going on with that you don't have to be aware of, but it's always going to be the case that given linear demand, given that demand's a line, marginal revenue is going to be twice as steep as it. So the monopolist's profit maximizing decision comes down to choosing two variables. The first is to set quantity. And when they set quantity, they're going to do the same thing that firms in a competitive market did. They're going to find the quantity that equates marginal revenue to marginal cost. And at that point, they're going to shut down production. So I've got four different possibilities here on this graph of output choices for the monopolist. The first one is where marginal cost is minimized. The second is at point 2, where marginal cost and marginal revenue are equal to each other. The third one is where average total cost is minimized. And the fourth one is where marginal cost and demand intersect. So 1 isn't going to be, quantity that associated with 1 here isn't going to be the output level that a monopolist chooses, because at that point the marginal cost is here and the marginal revenue of that good is way up there, and that doesn't give us this notion about marginal cost equaling marginal revenue. So 1 fails because marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. So we're going to wipe away possibility 1 there. 2 is the output level that the monopolist is going to choose, because at 2, the last unit that they produce, right, whatever unit this is, marginal cost of producing that unit is equal to the marginal revenue that the monopolist would accrue from producing that good, from selling it to consumers. So, right, those two curves intersect with each other. That's going to be the output level that the monopolist is going to choose. So let's mark that as Q sub m. But let's think about 3 and 4 here, because they suffer from the same problem. The marginal cost of producing those goods is greater than the marginal revenue. So at 3, right, the average total cost is minimized. That's going to minimize cost per unit, but that good isn't going to be, the monopolist isn't going to be interested in producing that many goods, because the cost of doing so is way up here, and the revenue change that they get from producing that good is less than the cost. That violates this rule that they're going to follow in order to equate marginal revenue and marginal cost. So 3 is out. As is 4, right? With this output associated with point 4 here, marginal cost is way up here. Marginal revenue producing that good's way down there. That's a violation of that rule, so we wouldn't expect them to produce at an output level associated with 0.4 either. So the monopolist is going to produce Q sub m goods, and now, right, and this is an incredible power that monopolists have, they get to choose price. So the monopolist is going to make this good artificially small, and then they're going to charge an artificially high price for the good. And what they're going to try to do here is take away as much willingness to pay from consumers as they possibly can. So given this output level of Q sub m that they've chosen here, right, they're just going to move down the consumer's demand curve until they get to the point where the willingness to pay for the consumer who's going to consume that last good that the monopolist produces, the Q sub mth good, they're going to charge P sub m and take away all that consumer surplus, the most consumer surplus that they have, given the fact that their output level is going to be Q sub m. So let's write a quick note down about that. So their goal here in setting a price of P sub m, given the fact that their output's Q sub m, is to take away as much consumer surplus from consumers as possible. They're going to charge the highest price given the willingness to pay of consumers. So at this point we can figure out what profit is for the monopolist, because we have price and we have quantity. And we've got information about costs. So for monopolist, profit equals revenue minus total cost. And revenue is always price times quantity. We have both of those. You can rewrite total cost as average total cost multiplied by Q. We have that information. Given the fact that Q sub m is going to be the output level for the monopolist, they're going to go up to, we can figure out average total cost of producing that amount of goods by using the average total cost curve. And so the amount of profit that economists are going to, or that monopolists are going to collect in this market is just this area of this rectangle that I've shaded in green. And if you're a monopolist, it only makes sense that you're going to earn positive economic profits. This is definitely positive economic profits here. And the monopolist has that privilege of earning these profits in perpetuity. For as long as they want to earn them, they can, so long as they maintain that barrier to entry in the market. In competitive markets, if you saw profits that were greater than zero, there would be entry into the market. There can be no entry in this market. The monopolist just maintains this profit level so long as that barrier to entry is maintained.